audience. Hello, speakers. Happy Thursday. Let me see. Where is Kyle? Let me
Where
get
is
Kyle.
Kyle? There he is.
Oh, there he is. Hi, Kyle. I think Kyle is connecting with the camera and the mic. If we have any problems, Richard will hold the fort while I help Kyle on the backstage. Let's
All right.
go.
Well, you know me. I
I
can
think
talk
he's here.
forever, dude.
Oh,
There
there
he
you
is.
go. Thank you, audience, for joining us today. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Kyle. Audience, you are in for a treat because this event's going to be fantastic. We're here today to talk about procurement and how to make them to turn them from enemy to your ally in your sales process. And this event is brought to you today by the team at Modern Sales Pros. And for those of you in the audience not familiar with MSP, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. And our mission is to create an environment for members to answer the toughest revenue questions they might have and to see around corners they might not know about. And we do that through great live sessions like this one you're about to experience. We invite great professionals to teach you how to be great. We have quarterly summits. We just had one last week. You should check it out. And we also have in-person events, which is very, very exciting. So if you're not yet a part of the MSP community, you'll be invited to join us right after this event. That's all from me. I am so excited about this event and all the key takeaways the audience will take. So Richard, I'm going to pass the mic to you. You can introduce yourself and then ask Kyle to introduce himself and just have fun. I will be listening, but I'll be back later for some outro notes. Richard, you can
My
take it from here.
pleasure. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. Super excited for this. This is a very cool topic. Couple things. First, I'd love people to just go in the chat. Tell us where you're dialing in from. If you're comfortable telling us your company name, we'd love to know it. We'd love to know, you know, what your average deal size is, your sales cycle. If you're hiring, feel free to put that in there too, because I think there's probably a lot of people who are looking for jobs. So so we want to make this not just yes, this topic is about procurement. We also want to make it about community, and that's a big piece of Modern Sales Pros. If you're not a part of that, you should be a part of Modern Sales Pros, and I know Eduardo can put a link in there at some point too. But thank you for being here. My name is Richard Harris. I am the founder of Harris Consulting Group and Need Selling, and have just been a big fan of Modern Sales Pros and contribute a lot and get a little snarky on the chats with people, which they seem to like. I haven't gotten kicked out yet, although I'll consider it a badge of honor when it happens. Sales trainer to all kinds of companies like Gainsight, back in the day, Zoom, Salesforce, Salesloft, all kinds of places that people know. And I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to introduce our friend Kyle Selahowski. And Kyle, I hope I didn't butcher it, even though we've done this a couple of times.
Yeah, no, not at all. That's perfect. You nailed it.
So
So, thanks,
let me just give
Richard.
the quick piece. I want to give,
Sure.
yeah, I want to give the quick intro. When this topic came up, I reached out to everybody I knew, me, John Barrows, Pete Kazanji, everybody who knows Modern Sales Pros, Scott Leese, everybody who knows Lars Nielsen. Does anybody know anybody in procurement? I'd like to do a training on it. None of us knew. Nobody knew anybody and had a relationship in procurement. I'm like, what the fuck? We've been in sales for how long and nobody knows this? So then I posted in Modern Sales Pros. I said, hey, does anybody know anybody in procurement? And I posted in some other chats, and that's how I got introduced to Kyle. Kyle's coming to us from Mercedes-Benz, the Mercedes-Benz. And I was like, all right, this is killer. So Kyle, and now introduce yourself. So
Take it away.
that's how we got here.
Well, I appreciate the background there for sure. And just for clarification, so Mercedes-Benz, it's not a dealership, believe it or not. That's the first question I always get is what location, what dealership location are you in? It's actually
Right.
Mercedes-Benz, the R&D group here in beautiful Farmington Hills, Michigan. It's sunny and 55 today, which is great. Spring's here. Unfortunately, so are my allergies, I guess. But so my name is Kyle. I'm super excited as well to have this conversation. I was shocked when Richard said nobody knew their procurement contacts at their companies that they're selling to. That blew my mind. So this conversation for me is excellent as well. It builds our relationship, which benefits both parties. Ultimately, I want to close a deal too. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But so I
How
have
long have you
a
been in
wife.
procurement, Kyle? How long have you been doing procurement?
approximately 20 years.
Got it.
And
And
it
when you were when you
started.
were Kyle, when you were growing up, did you say, "Mom and Dad, I want to be in procurement at Mercedes Benz"?
All right, so this is it. It was actually Porsche, but I did say I wanted to work in the automotive industry. But it really, the purchasing and buying and logistics passion started with sushi. So I couldn't wrap my mind around how I could get a nice piece of fresh sushi in Michigan for like $9 a roll. When I mean, it just blew my mind how many hands it had passed through, where it was caught, and et cetera. So I started in Michigan State in supply chain management, and it kind of went from there.
That's cool. I appreciate you telling that story. A couple things around housekeeping. Yes, it's being recorded, so you will get replays of this. By the way, you cannot pitch Kyle. Like, it's a Mercedes Benz thing. As much as Kyle would probably love to buy everything you all want to sell, it's a big no. So please connect with Kyle. I know he's the kind of guy who would give you feedback of like, hey, how would you approach this or how would you approach that? We're going to talk about a lot of that today, but you can't call Kyle and say, hey, how do I get Kyle to buy Mercedes Benz to buy our software? That's the wrong way to do things with procurement, unless
It,
you really know someone. So
and actually, I have to add to that. Now that I report through legal, it's my corporate responsibility to say these are my thoughts and my opinions rather than those of Mercedes-Benz R&D. So
fair
want to
enough.
get that out there as part of my spiel.
There it is. There it is. Eduardo, I know we've got a poll. We want to see what the audience, how often this stuff goes on in terms of procurement. So go for it. Let's go visit the poll. I've never been part of the poll on this tool. So, Eduardo, is it up?
Hey, Richard.
Yeah.
Yes, the poll is up and it's on the screen right now. We have people voting. So audience, go click on the right-hand side. There is a poll function. You can visit there and just select your option.
Oh,
Do you see
I
on the
can't
screen,
see it.
Richard?
I don't see it.
No?
Does anybody else
You
see it?
see? Do you see it, Kyle?
I do not.
Oh, I see it. All right. So let me see if the audience, are you seeing? Oh,
The
John on the
audience is
audience
seeing
saying
it.
that he
That's
is
good.
seeing.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I don't know what's going on.
So
But we have
what are you
some
seeing
votes.
so far?
So we have 12% of people said they have no experience with procurement. 62% said they have some experience, and 25% said they're very experienced.
No, that's
That's
cool.
good.
That's
That's
great.
good.
Right?
And then I know we have one more poll too, right?
Yes. Let's
Let's
open
do that one.
other one. And now we have a second poll. Audience, go to the right-hand side. The poll. The question is, how many times a year do your deals go to procurement? We have some votes coming in. Oh, so far, 100% of the votes said more than 7. Oh, okay, so it's evening it out. Let's see. Let's wait a little bit more. That's a lot of times, audience. So far, all right, everyone seeing it? Are we good, audience? All right. So 12% of the audience said once or twice a year, it goes to procurement. Oh, you go up. 20% of the audience said once or twice it goes to procurement. 20% said 3 to 7, and 60% said more than 7
All right.
times a year.
Cool. All right. This
Yeah,
is a
that's a
good
lot of
topic.
times.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into it. All right. So, Kyle, let's just start at the beginning, right? Like, what's the role of procurement? Because I think even though some of us have experience, do they really understand the role? So, what are some of those
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just saving money as you might think. It really is the umbrella of value to the company, whether that's sourcing quality products, sourcing products from diverse group of companies. So all your eggs aren't in one basket. Yes, of course, negotiating, saving money as well. But really leading in my case, engineers through the purchasing process from the time they have, the idea of what they want to buy, what widget they want to buy, through getting that quality end product. That's the role of procurement is leading them through that process and sourcing that product.
So, one of the things when we were talking that I loved was, you mentioned that a big piece of procurement is not to harm the company, right? That's part of
Yeah,
your role.
for
That
sure.
doesn't mean spending money isn't harming the company, right? Like I think, you actually are there to spend money,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
That's part that's part of my dream job. Like I get to spend other people's money. I go shopping every day and negotiate those prices every day. Yeah. But
That's
you're
cool.
exactly right.
In your experience with procurement, how what's the relationship like? And again, you might be, based on being at Mercedes, but like procurement versus the legal terms, are you a part of that? Does it have to bounce around through those different departments? Like, how does
Yeah.
like just what's that navigation like?
Yeah. In my experience, at least in Mercedes-Benz R&D, it's pretty complicated. So procurement's also the first set of eyes on those terms and conditions that you just mentioned. So when I get an order from, company X to buy 100 widgets and it's got terms and conditions on there, I'm reviewing those or I'm pushing it back and saying, actually, we're going to use my paper, my terms and conditions for this. So we have a standard set that Mercedes likes to use 100% of the time. In some cases, that's not possible. So it's procurement's responsibility, in my case, to start with that first red line
Yep.
between sales and purchasing, and we discuss, what's going to work, what's not, before that ever ends up at legal's desk.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
I do go to legal, then I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know what I'm asking them for. It's just a much smoother
Does it,
process with legal.
and again, this can be, well, it depends. Does it go to procurement before it goes to legal? Does it go to legal before procurement, or does everybody get it all at once and then you meet in the middle?
A great question. It should go to procurement first. It should always go to procurement first, the terms and conditions. Generally, what happens, you'll see the salesperson send the order to the engineer or the person that wants the part first, right? Because that's who they've been corresponding with. And that's okay. That's fine. But then it needs to come to procurement right after that before it goes to legal. Legal's, we talked about legal backlog last time we spoke, Richard,
Yeah.
and that's the same case here. I mean, they're just backlogged. So if I, as procurement, can go to them and have specific requests for specific items and can move that through their process, the much easier it's going to be to close that deal and quicker.
Got it. Just out of curiosity, in your role, you know, you're not the only procurement guy in the research division, right? Are you part of a team? Do you oversee a team?
Yeah, so I manage the team for all of North America,
And
and
how
we
many
have
people?
about
So how many people is that?
on my procurement team, it's four,
Okay.
but we're split out in different regions. So we have, and by the way, that's just the R&D purchasing team.
Right.
There's thousands of other buyers as well. But um, so they're split out in each individual region. We have three locations in California, one in Seattle, a couple in Michigan. So we have it divided that way.
Got it. And then is there only one legal team? So
There
everything
is.
comes from all these procurement to this like little part of the
Uh,
garden hose.
yeah, I misunderstood. No, there's multiple legal teams in North America as well. One for R&D though, and just to give you some perspective, I mean we are doing, let's see, about 1,300 or so orders a year right now. Different
Oh my
orders,
God.
different sizes of all. So it gets a little crazy, and you can
Right.
imagine the backlog that we're
Yeah.
trying to
And
work
I'm
through.
I'm really glad you said that because I think so often, salespeople are so self-centered and selfish that we're like, we kind of forget like these people have a life too. And I think, having that knowledge of just like, wow, 13,000, that's a that's a ton over, 13,000 over your five people.
Oh, 1,300, yes, but over the five people.
1,300, I'm
But
sorry, 1,300 over five. That's a
yeah,
lot. That's
yeah,
still a
yeah.
lot.
Oh,
So,
it's a ton.
but
Yeah, it's a ton considering you're trying to navigate the negotiation, the red lines, work with internal customers, external customers. I
yeah.
mean, it's a lot of work for just one.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I'm gonna sort of give the teaser of next things we're gonna talk about. We're gonna talk about sort of how does procurement analyze things. We're gonna talk about how do we approach procurement, when and how should sales do that. What do you look for in a contract aside from pricing? Who's paper? So there's a ton of these topics. We're also going to jump into how do I approach procurement and how do I get my internal champion to go to procurement? Because I think
yeah.
that's a really important piece that I think people want to know, and people can put in the chat and give us other things they want to know too. So please put your questions there. So, you know, one of the things I've learned through this with you is that a big piece of your job is to review and analyze, not just be a paper pusher. So what does that mean as you're trying to review and analyze things so that we understand?
Yeah, I think surprisingly to sales, it's not really. I am analyzing costs, obviously, but um, my role right now focuses a lot also on terms and conditions. So payment terms, the statement of work, so the deliverables and the timing of those. Really, now it's more about what value we can add to the company, not just dollars, but like what else is there that we need? Is there quality objectives that we need to eat? Do they have ISO standards that we have to include? So there's all these things that we spend a lot of time on now, that more so than we used to, for sure.
Yeah, I have a question for you that's a little off the cuff. Um, and I see one coming in the chat. So Kelly, thank you. We're going to answer those in a second. Um, how hard is it when it's a rip and replace, right? There's a competitor. I'm coming in. I want to displace them. Is that hard at all for procurement because it now makes you have to do double and triple duty, or is it like, hey, if this is what the buyer in our organization wants, I'll support it, and here's how I support that, you know?
Yeah. Oh, no, that's a wonderful question. It is difficult in the sense that it's just more work, right? Instead of reviewing one set of terms and one price sheet, you're
Mhm.
now doing multiple. However, I will tell you, it's also mandatory in a lot of cases. Not just Mercedes-Benz, through industry sometimes requires that you have RFQs, so you have competitive bids. The trick is submitting a proposal that adds more value than the incumbent supplier. So whatever that looks like, it kind of depends on the situation, but making my life easier is certainly, the objective in that case, where I can plug and replace, just like you said, Richard.
Well, that's really good, and this was a unplanned perfect segue for Kelly's question, which is, um, what perks up procurement's ears, right? So in general, what perks it up? But also let's talk about that. Hey, if you're going to displace a procurement, is it just price? Right. But in
That's where,
general terms, first, let's go to the first question. In general
yeah.
terms, what are the things that makes procurement go, we should want to work with this vendor?
Yep. Certainly pricing. Not
Sure.
gonna lie there. If there's a discount that's off of list pricing, that's already offered, already on the table before I even ask the question, my ears are perked up. I'm listening, because I know then when we get into the negotiation and the discussion, you're open to having a discussion. It's not a brick wall that I'm talking to.
Do we need to come in and say, oh, by the way, here's the discount at 15%? Because me as a sales trainer is like, fuck that. It's more like, hey, Kyle, here's our price. Always, of course, Kyle, I'm very happy to talk about flexibility, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because I
I
don't need
think
to
the
negotiate
latter.
against myself.
Exactly. No, I think the latter's smarter for, as a salesperson, for sure. You don't want to give away, everything you have right off the bat. I think that's a smarter decision, and probably a smarter approach. But as long as you're letting the buyer know, like, hey, we are open. We want to have this negotiation. We want your business, and let's chat.
So,
Let's see what we
so
can
what
do.
else? Yeah. So what else? So A, the flexibility,
Yeah.
knowing there's flexibility, and B, an actual discount help. What are the other
Yeah.
things that perk your ears up?
So one of the things which I didn't mention last time, kicking myself a little bit from that conversation, reputation as well. So if you have, or maybe you don't have, but if you can establish some kind of reputation based on quality, or speed of delivery is huge right now with supply chain issues and things. If you have something that you can offer aside from price or in addition to, then my ears are also perked up at that point.
So service.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Does
absolutely.
sometimes when people say, there's like, here's the cost of our product, and by the way, there's a $15,000 implementation fee. Does waiving that
Yeah.
implementation fee perk your ears, or no, we get it. We know you have to put resources there.
No, of course. I mean, my mind does go to, and I think in general, procurement's mind goes to, well, um, are you saying there's a 15% discount because you already marked it up 15%?
Right.
So it's got to be clear that this is actual list price and you're willing to be flexible with certain things.
Hmm.
So whatever that takes, that's where we start to get excited a little bit and having this conversation.
Yeah.
It's not really. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. There's one thing. So it's like it's in every one of my contracts because I make people red light it out. Is if you want to earn a discount, prepayment discount is 3%. Multi-year contract is this percent. If you let me use your logo, it's this percent. Um,
Yeah, that's beautiful.
and then I can kind of say, so Kyle, which ones do you want? So that kind of stuff.
Beautiful.
Do you think that turns that off, or do you think like that's no big deal?
That's fantastic. That's a great approach because there's options on the table at that point. And it's not just one, it's not just, like you said, using the company logo, which I cannot do. I cannot
Right. Right.
grant that in my case. So
Right.
even if there is a discount available,
Yeah.
so having different options available and willing to discuss those.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
also this theory that goes around in sales circles that we're getting a little off the tangent, but I know this is important, where it's like, well, do I need to give 15% or 20%? Or is procurement really happy with 3%? Like I've done some
Yeah.
deals with big, like Fortune 10 companies, and I'm like, okay, I'll do 3%. And they're like, really? Great. Like
Right.
they were
Right.
really happy. How
Right.
did, are we discounting too much when we go in the first place?
It depends, right? I mean, it depends on the size of the deal, I think mostly. So if I'm doing a $9-10 million deal and you're offering 3%, yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna be happy at that. But if it's a $10,000 order and it's 10%, that's fine. Whatever. It's not, it is what it is. It's not gonna get me too excited, I suppose. But yeah, when it comes to the general, say, percentage of savings that we're looking for, it does not have to be 15% to answer your question, Richard. Really, maybe 5-6%. I mean, my company target, maybe I'll bring that back a little bit, but let me just say it's not double digits. It's definitely single digits that we're shooting
So
for.
there is sort of this dashboard, leaderboard. Here's the deals. Here's our goal. Like we have a goal as a team, just like a sales team, because we're a revenue piece of the team. Therefore, we try to make this happen in certain places. And, look, if you're another Fortune company, you might get a different kind of discount than a startup, right? Like, just kind of depends. So,
Yeah.
I want to come back to Kelly's second question. And I see some others in the chat, so please keep them coming. She'd love to get an idea on how to target procurement, specific titles that are more responsible for things like partnerships and business services, not supply and materials. Do those titles
Okay.
exist?
Yeah.
It's a great question. How do y'all bucket this stuff?
Yeah, it is a separate bucket for Mercedes-Benz, at least, where it's mergers and acquisitions is the group that would handle sort of startups, that we're looking at investing in or partnering with in some way. Now that eventually will lead to procurement because we've got to seal the deal in one way with a contract or another. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily start with procurement. It could start with M&A in that case where you're looking to be really partners.
Got it. Got it. This was a great question too of that I love from Justin around price reductions, which I think we talked about. Um, Proof of concepts. What do you think companies think of a paid proof of concept? Because there's this piece of like, I got to put a bunch of engineers on this. I got to put my time on this,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then on the other end, we know you're going to ask for a discount too. So now all of a sudden I've really negotiated against myself. Like, what do you think procurement's thoughts are around paid proof of concept or proof of concept in general?
Yep. That is a wonderful question. And we deal with that quite a bit, being in the research and development field. So on the one hand, it's the cost of doing business, right? If you want to work with a Mercedes-Benz or a Ford or a Chrysler, whoever, Stellantis, or whoever, then yeah, you're probably going to have to put a lot of skin in the game and really bet on yourself, bet on your company, bet on your product to make it work. And then, you know, if it ends up in production, you'll see the benefits at that point. On another hand, certainly you have expenses to pay for the development that you're going through, whether that's service, goods, whatever, hardware. So it's a fine line, Richard. I mean, it depends on the situation. In my case, we are certainly willing to invest in a product that, or a proof of concept, even that we see a great deal of value with. If it's
How would one, again, let's think about this. So, I've got this proof of concept. What's the right kind of way to say, hey, even to your champion, because then champion's got to get to Kyle to say, look, if we do a proof of concept, how do we deliver a message to the champion that says it's okay to ask your procurement, because they're not unfamiliar with this paid proof of concept? Like what can help us get through that a little bit if we're trying to get a paid proof of concept as value, not because we're trying to rob Mercedes-Benz.
Sure. No, I mean, really, it's just stating exactly what you said. Like this is not a free proof of concept. We need a contract in place. And at that point, the engineer's not most likely is not going to be able to sign off on that contract. So that's when you get procurement involved, or when the champion can go to procurement and say, hey, look, we're doing this proof of concept. The supplier wants a contract in place. Can you help me out?
Yeah.
And that's where procurement will get involved.
Cool. All right, we're gonna jump in a minute to when should procurement get involved. This is one of the most interesting ones. Um, so there's another question from Steve. That's how do you validate the pricing you see in actual list price? Well, the first answer is you hired Richard to train your sales team, but I hope I don't get kicked out of Modern Sales Pros for pimping myself. But how do we do that, right? Like, how do we validate that price, right? Particularly if we're an earlier stage company, maybe we have Series A or B funding, so we're not stupid. We're not, we've got something going on. How do we still validate that for a company? Or do you think that, as long as you can prove it, you're good?
And let me clarify the question. Is that procurement that's validating the price?
I'm assuming so, since this is a procurement conversation. How does procurement look at something to validate that that's a fair price?
So there's multiple ways. There's industry tools, that we subscribe to, if it's a commodity based product. But if it's proof of concept, we might go out for an RFQ. Asking multiple suppliers to bid on that, so we can kind of balance or weigh them out against each other. That's another way. Or if it's a single source, meaning you're the only game in town, we do our best based on whatever we've purchased before, some historical close product or service. We do our best to kind of validate that pricing.
Yeah, you try to commoditize me. So I love it when
Exactly.
you tell me
Yeah.
that. Then I'm like, yeah, I'm not a commodity. Come on, Kyle. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
This is good. I appreciate sharing that. You mentioned there are tools out there, and I assume this, because you're in supply chain, that's not surprising. Like, what does a tool like that do? Is it like, here's how you buy nuts and bolts, and this company has it at this price, and this company has them at that? Like, is it as simple as that, or is it like, no, Richard, it's more like this?
Yeah, there are tools that are that simple, but the one that I use, I'm not plugging it or anything, is definitely more complex than that. It goes down into raw materials, and even uh, delays in shipping and things like that that can add up to costs. So it's like a more built-in complex
Got it.
cost at that point.
Is there anything out there? I'm assuming not everybody, but I bet a lot of people are out here in the software world. Is there anything out there like that in software that says, hey, if you're looking for like we all know, like there's some review sites and stuff out there, but is there something that's on the procurement side around pricing that y'all are able to leverage to figure that stuff out too on the software side?
On the software side, there is, however, we don't use it too much because we're dealing with software development that's 5-10 years down the road and is really just being developed. So I actually, and it's a good question, I actually rely heavily on your champion, your engineers in the company that are working with you to develop these products. They're not
Gotcha.
even at the market level yet. So I do rely heavily on the engineers in those cases.
Yeah, that's cool. I appreciate hearing that. John, I think we're going to get to your question as we go through some stuff. I want to sort of get us a little bit back on track, and then we'll come in. Um, you know, we talked a little bit about the discounting, so I'm looking at that. Let's talk about the contract, the MSA, the T's and C's. Whose paper do you use? Would someone like Mercedes ever use Richard Harris's paper if you were hiring a sales trainer, or be like, no, we got a standard thing for someone like you, Richard? Come on.
I mean, for a legend like you, we might make an exception for sure.
Yeah,
But yeah, we definitely want to use my MBR DNA paper 100% of the time. Now, if it's like we talked about a new software package that's not even on the market yet, and there's situations where we share paper, I'll redline yours, go to legal with it. There's definitely situations that we don't have to use Mercedes-Benz paper. That's
yeah,
correct.
got it, got it, got it. What are the T's and C's you look for? What are the kind of things that matter?
Uh, Certainly, the SOW and the TNCs, I'm going to split those into two separate buckets right now.
Sure.
So the statement of work is really your description of your deliverables and the timing of those, and even the pricing. And that is really what I spend a lot of my time focusing on as procurement, because those need to be right to be able to get the quality timing down for the end customer. The terms and conditions, the second bucket now, of course, those are important as well. But if I'm using my paper, I'm not worried about it. When it comes to redlining your paper as a supplier, Richard, then I'm looking for confidentiality language. I'm looking for sustainability, perhaps. That's a new topic which we haven't quite touched on yet.
What do you? Yeah.
Generative AI language. Say that.
So what are those? So sustainability. What do you mean?
So in the automotive industry in particular, actually in really any industry now, down the supply chain, we want to make sure that we're not running into issues with, you could call it what you want, but really it's making sure your suppliers are doing the right thing, sourcing the right products globally from the right companies.
Ethic. You're
Um,
sort of like
it,
ethics, or
yep,
some level of
exactly.
giving back to the
Responsibility.
world, not
It,
child
it,
labor and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly,
Yeah,
pollution related,
right.
whatever it may be. So that's certainly a hot topic. Generative AI is a hot topic because there's a lot of discussion around that right now internally, um, where we have to make sure we're not sharing data with these generative AI
I
companies.
just wrote about this, that you employees are going to start sending this message that you cannot put something in Chat GPT because
Exactly.
it's trade secrets and stuff like that. So,
Yeah,
um,
exactly right. So we're
yeah,
looking for these certain pieces in the terms and conditions
yeah.
right now that.
Cool. There's a I have a question, and it's gonna actually help us bounce over to Mike's question in the chat. Do I, if I can, let if you're allowed to say, well, let's just say Mercedes is a net 45 term. If I say to you, prepayment gets you an X discount, or net 15 is my requirement, how does procurement see that just that specific term? Because I think it comes up a lot, and I think people are afraid to use that as leverage.
Yeah, especially today, you're right. It does come up a lot. I mean, the cost of money right now is pretty high. So what I'm
What is the
looking
cost of
for,
money right now? Do you know the number? I don't know.
oh,
I'm
I don't,
asking.
yeah, I don't know off the top of my, I mean, depends, I guess, how much you're borrowing
I
as
could
well.
chat
But
GPT it, I'm sure.
yeah, exactly. But it's gotta, if you're asking for prepayment, let's just use that as the example. I'm definitely gonna try and fight that one because we want to hang on to that cash as long as possible. Of course, you want it as early as possible, but we'll shoot for my standard term is net 30 actually, which we've with our finance team, our CFO, we've come to that conclusion. We're pretty good at that compared to some other companies. So that right away tends to be a pretty solid number in the automotive industry, at least a pretty solid number, not 30. So if you're arguing for prepayment, it's got to be a really, really solid argument for me to say, yeah, we can do that, or net 15 even to change those payment terms at all. Really, it's got to be a solid argument. Like you're
Right.
buying equipment, or you need to hire a team, and you can't hire a team without money. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Does your team, this is Mike's question, it's a great question. Do you go through any sort of negotiation training?
Oh yeah, yeah, we certainly do. In fact, all the time. It's not quite one and done deal. You take your negotiation class, and then you that's that. You have your little certification or whatever. We're always trying to learn new tactics.
And what kind of things are you? That's really cool, and it bodes well for sales training, right? It's not one and done. What kind of things do you learn? Like, is it language skills and how to position? Like, this is fascinating to me.
I totally agree. It's an extremely fascinating subject, and certain things like body language and yeah, words and language, of course. But body language is 80% of the discussion. Almost is 80% of what you're giving away. But I
All right,
would
I'm going to
really
test you.
say,
What do you learn in body language? Because I'm big on this stuff. What kind of things?
oh, well, and this doesn't apply to me because this is why it's top of my mind. Like when someone's got their arms folded or what have they're closed off in a closed off position, but
Oh yeah, but
actually they
that's table stakes. What else?
yeah,
Give me something
yeah, yeah.
juicier.
Uh, I'm not trying to give away all my secrets, Richard, but
I'll
I
give away
would.
a couple of them. I'll give you some. I bet you don't know.
All right, let's hear 'em.
All right. So people always say, look people in the eyes. Don't ever look people in the eyes. Look them in the eyebrow. The eyebrow gives it away, not the eyes. Like even right now, your eyebrows just went up because you're like, ooh, I never thought about that. Now you're curious and you're open. Now I know what to do. The
Yeah.
size of your ears. If you have big ears, by the way,
Huh.
guess what? If who you're talking to has big ears, they like to listen. They like stories, right? If
I
so,
think
these are
everyone
all
likes
like,
stories.
are you learning this stuff?
Yeah, those little tips and tricks for sure. I haven't heard the ear one to tell you the
Yeah.
truth because I have small ears and I love to
Yes.
listen. I love stories. But
Yes.
anyway, I
That
will say
that means
this.
you like bullet points, I think, if I remember correctly. So
I'll say this: relationship building is the key, though. It's. I don't care if you're sitting across from me and your eyebrows are raised and you got your arms
mhm.
folded. We're gonna and we need to work together. We're gonna find a way to work together, and we'll find that little piece of commonality that we can come together on and build on from there.
That's great. So again, without giving away all your secrets, but now we're all going to go just Google it and chat GPT it. So you might
Yeah,
as well just
yeah.
give it
Chat
away
GPT.
anyway, Kyle. What other kinds of things like are you taught how to do a good give get? Are you taught about the language to use? Like what kind of things is procurement taught in negotiation training?
Well, timing's always a piece of this too. Are you the first one to give something or get something, and that becomes the new starting point, right? So I know as a sales professional, you don't want to give away anything, and I just mentioned, hey, come to the table with a proposal like different payment terms for using a logo. But if you're willing to do that, it does open that relationship up and that conversation up. And now we can say, yeah, let's at least have this conversation. That gets the foot in the door, right?
Yeah.
Other
Yeah.
if you're not willing to give anything, and I'm playing hardball too, we're not going to get anywhere. Then at that point, it's
Let me
stalemate.
let me ask you this, Kyle. This is what I do. I'll go in and I'll say, Kyle, the cost of my service is $23,393. How does that feel? So
Hmm.
that's my first thing because pricing's always an emotion. Anybody taught you this
Oh,
one?
and I'm gonna go like this. See my eyebrows? I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
Good.
What else you got?
Now, here's the good thing. The fact that Kyle does that is information I need. So I don't care. I mean,
Right.
I care how he feels, but he'll give me, oh, that's too expensive. He'll give me, that's about right. It's within the budget. Or, wow, I
You got
didn't think
feedback.
it was that much. Which is what as a salesperson, I need to know that. And so for me,
Yep.
that's a starting point. So he gives me a give that oftentimes he doesn't even know he's giving me. So that's one
That's right.
thing. What happens if I say to you, Kyle, because there is nobody else who does what I do. And I go, Kyle, I know you're looking for a discount, but this is what the market dictates.
Yep.
What's your response to something like that?
I mean, if we're talking about your services, I'll say, well, I'll pay you double. But
Stop.
uh,
But
It honestly, it really just depends on the situation and who I'm dealing with.
yeah,
But yeah, if the market's dictating that, I need to know that before I even walk into the meeting. You're not telling me anything new at that point, or shouldn't be, you know.
right.
So you're not going to really most likely get a rise out of me. However, then we look at something else. If the market's dictating that price, we look
Yep.
at payment terms.
Cool.
We look at a 2-year term rather than a 1-year term. We look
Yep.
at whatever the deliverables in some sequential order that we haven't thought of yet. That might change pricing.
Got it.
So
Got it. Cool. All right. Well, let's talk about how soon should procurement be involved. This, I think, is a fascinating topic, right? You know,
yes,
deals are coming through. Uh, look, it's April 26th. How many new deals that you never heard about have come in this week?
yeah, too many to count. Uh,
And so, and that frustrates you, I assume.
Totally, yeah. To answer your question right off the bat, I mean, we really should be and want to be involved from. It doesn't have to be day one when you're talking to the engineer in my case, but like soon after day two, because if you're looking to squeeze a deal in towards the end of the month, it should have been mid-month or beginning of the month really that we're working on this and redlining terms and conditions and negotiation pricing and whatever. But um, it is very frustrating to answer your question when this PO has to go out tomorrow and this contract needs to be signed and yada yada yada. It's like, you know what? It's not going to
How,
happen.
yeah, in theory, how long is a procurement process? Like, on average, that might be like if someone sort of, and it's not, hey, it's the end of the month or end of the quarter and we got the special deal and blah, 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 not that stuff, but like generally speaking, a procurement process, and it could be based on the size of the deal. Is there an average time? Is it 30 days for y'all? Is it 60 days? What's it like?
It's definitely based on the size. It could be months. If it's a large enough deal, if we're looking at a $500 million project, I mean that literally could be more than 6 months. But if we are looking at a $50,000 project, it could be the same week, could be 2 days to go through our process because really it depends on the threshold of approval. We have
Right. So,
that's what it really depends on.
so how do we as a salesperson, right, um, go to our internal champion and say, hey, when should procurement get involved? And a lot of times the internal champion thinks not till the very end,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But we're hearing from you that you'd like to hear from it sooner.
yeah,
Are there
yeah.
certain ways that is there certain advice that you'd encourage us to use with our champion to say, hey, here's how you might want to approach it?
Yeah, absolutely. Really, it is just asking, like, what does your process look like to get this
Yeah, but a lot of
contract
times they
signed?
don't know. They're
It,
clueless.
if I do my job correctly, hopefully they do. But if they're clueless and say, okay, listen, no sweat, I can figure that out. Do you have a contact that I can speak with directly? I'll copy you in on the email or the exchange, and we can figure this out together.
Yeah.
It really is trying to, I don't want to say like just pull that name out of your champion because they might not be ready to share that information. That's something to keep in mind.
Why do you think they're not? So here's this part from you that says, hey, the sooner we're in, the easier it is for everybody, including your own internal Mercedes person. Why do
Yeah.
you think they're not ready?
So the easiest answer to that is that they're not quite sold on the idea yet, or they just don't have the budget for it. They like the idea of it, but haven't brought it to their manager, discussed budget requirements and what might be available to them. So there's a couple main reasons. Those are the two that I could think of.
Do you, if something's not budgeted for, are, would you prefer not to hear from us? Right? It's like, hey, this needs to get budget. Someone needs to go get approval for budget before you even come to me, which I could totally understand. If there's budget, I see where you're suggesting it. But if there's no budget, is it like, well, actually, Richard, you do need to slow the roll.
Yeah, yeah. I would say you're right in that. Well, we'd still want to be involved because frankly, I can help approve that budget and get those contracts rolling.
Yes.
So I could tell you, listen, there's just no way it's going to happen, versus the engineer being able to maybe or maybe not be able to tell you that.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to riff for a second. If someone wants to try and scribe this stuff into the chat, because I think people are going to like it. If I'm working to my internal champion and I'm trying to get to Kyle, the things I might say, and Kyle, after I'm done, feel free to say,
Okay.
don't say it that way, Richard. That sounds stupid. I might
Okay.
say to this champion, hey, it's been our experience that procurement processes can take 30 days. That procurement often gets bombarded by everybody at the last minute and they hate it, which I would hate for them to look that way at you. We've been told that the sooner procurement is involved, they can actually help us find the budget. And there's an appropriate way for us to do that. And I'm happy to do that with you. If you're comfortable, I'd love to send an email and I would copy you on it that says, hey, what is your process? Here's what we've learned. How does it work? So that way, you, my internal champion, I'm trying to take care of you, and you are trying to show
Yep.
your procurement person that you don't want to hit them at the end of the quarter or the end of the month. So it's something like, and again, I would rewordsmith that about 20 times, but does that kind of sound like a way to encourage our champion to approach you?
1,000%. You're solving everyone's problem at that point. You're figuring out how to get to procurement. You're keeping your engineer in the loop, and at the same time helping them out get the product that they want, of course. And you're involving procurement at that point up front. So
Yeah.
that solves everyone's issue.
Yeah. I like what you said too, though. It was really eye-opening for me. I hope people heard it, which was, well, you know what? If there isn't a budget, there could be a chance where I could help fight for it,
Right.
which is not something I've ever heard or even thought of about with procurement. Oh, and the title of this, how do we make it, you're not the enemy, you're the ally. Well, here's a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think finding a right way to craft this message of, you know, I've had some experience, with other procurement departments where they can actually help you find the budget, Mr. or Mrs., champion. That might be a way to sort of approach that. Anyway, I don't know if people are in the chat agreeing with this approach, or if you have some way to do this, folks. I think other people would love to hear what your thoughts are on how y'all handle this kind of stuff. So
And Richard, let me just expand on what you said there for a quick second. The reason that I would help find that budget is because selfishly, I want to bring value to the company as well, and say, hey, look what we found, look what we did, look what we replaced, look what we saved money on. So it's a benefit for me as a buyer as well to kind of push those through in some cases if there's
good. It
value
also
there.
helps you get a discount. Hey, I just got you this budget. Right.
There
So
you go.
in fact, that might be an approach. By the way, we found out that if we ask them sooner, they can help find the budget. And yeah, we might be able to get more flexible on pricing, which I think you're going to ask me for anyway. So that's another, like, seriously, like
Yeah, it's
I wouldn't
true.
want it to sound that cheesy or salesy, but like there's some value, I think, to
But
at
it
least
is.
trying. Right.
Absolutely.
Um, you know, what, let's talk a little bit about international. Right. And by the way, we're down to about 10 minutes. So if folks have other questions, or if I missed a question in the chat, please repost it so we get to it. But so you work for this massive conglomerate, global, right?
Yeah.
Does stuff have to go back to Germany?
Yeah. Yes, it does. And it makes that process more lengthy, of course, because they have a threshold of approvals that's different than the US. And, so if the budget comes from there, that's got to go up another level within Germany as
Yeah,
well. So,
got it. What's it? And I'm actually going to flip it around too. If you got a second, if you can think and talk at the same time, but is there a
okay.
question you'd want to ask the audience? Is there a question you'd like to get some feedback from them? But what do you recommend about when we do have to negotiate internationally? And I don't just necessarily mean with a Mercedes in this particular country. What are the things about salespeople we should know when you think about just negotiating? It doesn't even have to be with procurement, but you've done a lot of this kind of stuff. Like, what should we be mindful about?
I would really caution the timing aspect of it. Business is done differently in Germany as opposed to the US, which I'll touch on in a second. But part of that is the timing. And, there's you have to have all your ducks in a row when you take a project to Germany specifically, because they want to see the summary, they want to see, the cost benefit analysis before they will make any decisions. And really it should be that way, right?
Right. Right.
But they take it to another level. I will also say you got to know who the audience is. So the US way of doing business is different than the European way of doing business. And if you're going to be discussing deals with, uh, or not just European, but Asian markets or wherever, just know your audience, Google
So
it.
what's different? You said it's done differently. Is there an example? Like, oh, this is what that means. Even if it's one country specific, I think we just like to live in that world where like, what's a real example?
What I guess what I meant by that was, like, you don't want to offend anybody by assuming, you're showing up to a meeting, let's just say in Germany, and you're used to wearing, I don't know, shorts and a t-shirt to your meetings in California with MBR DNA. It's
Right.
not that way in Germany. It's um, more business formal than that. So you should know that going into that meeting, right? And that even includes Teams chats as well. So just one quick example.
Yeah. Do you how do you think, again, it's a broad question, but salespeople are measured by the month or the quarter. Companies aren't. And then even internationally it can be different. Like some countries where it's just, it's like the process is like a 4-hour dinner, which is very different than the United States, right? So
Right.
what advice do you have for people to understand or approach that, or how do we figure that out?
Yeah, and it can be different, right? So my company, my group is annual planning cycle. So we're not looking at we are looking at quarterly budgets, of course, but we plan on an annual cycle. So really, it's end of year that we need to be concerned with, in my
Yeah.
case. And if it's middle of the year and you're trying to push something through to meet your second quarter deadline, I'm not so incentivized. It's really doing a favor at that point, unless there's you're bringing some value to
Yeah,
me.
there's a real business need for it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it's just asking the question. I mean, again, that's all part of figuring out, what does your PO process look like? What's the contracting look like? What does your planning cycle look like? That could be a question that you throw in there, depending on when you, as a salesperson, need that deal done. And
Yep.
then, well, they're not incentivized based on time at this point.
Yep. Yep. Great. I've got 3 more questions I can ask, but I'm curious. Do you have a question you want to ask the audience? Is there anything?
You know, um, I really want to make sure that all of the attendees walk away with some piece that they can take with them, some advice. I hope it was worthwhile. So I would say my question is, can you put in the chat maybe something that you took away or that you found very interesting? Maybe even want to know more about, that we can touch on with
Yeah.
the next 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Look at that. He's a salesperson. He's turning it around on us. Nobody would have thought that from a procurement guy. So, um, I love that idea. What's one thing you walked out of here, or what's one question? And maybe let me ask you this question, Kyle. What's one thing we haven't discussed that you wish salespeople knew with procurement?
Oh, let's see. We're not roadblocks, I would say. We really do, like the title of the webinar says, we really do want to be your ally. There always seems to be like this conflicting relationship, but I got to tell you, the suppliers that I've built great relationships with. I understand the value of those relationships, and I've learned that in my procurement career from other procurement managers and buyers. It's not that we are trying to be difficult. That's not it. Some may be, but really, we want to close a deal just as much as you do. So, um, yeah, that's what I would say is maybe a surprise to most salespeople now.
Yeah, that's really cool. Mike, thanks so much for putting those in there, and I'm actually putting this in the chat. Um, you know, I'm wondering how many of us are reverse engineering and Googling how to do procurement training. Go find one of those people to come teach me. So
There
I
you
want to
go.
learn what Kyle has learned, right? Um,
By the way, I'm pretty sure it's the same tactics, the harass, negotiating, or you
yeah,
know,
but I also think there's value to learn how you're taught, right? Like if and not to use it against you, like that. I mean, that's part of it, right? But part of it is to go, oh, well, that'll give me their mindset. Like a lot of the stuff you shared
yeah,
today is, I hope you've cleared some clouds around the mindset around
I
this
hope so.
piece. And I think,
Yeah.
hearing how you negotiate an upsell cross sell is different than a net new deal versus, a renewal process versus how procurement's actually taught or how a legal team is taught to negotiate. Like it's everybody. So to me, it's kind of be like, oh, that'd be kind of a cool thing to go do just so I understand the perspective better.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. So, um, what's your compensation plan? How are you incentivized? All right, Kyle, how much you making?
Ooh,
How many
on the
Mercedes do
spot.
you get?
I wish that were the case. So I can tell you my goals do involve having a savings target. Yes, they do. No surprise there. But it it also has to do with quality. Am I sourcing a quality product for the engineers? And our customers, my internal customers, my engineers, are they satisfied? Customer satisfaction rating with my service to them. I'm a service provider to my internal customers. That's ultimately you know what I'm judged upon, and where my bonus lies in.
Does it really? So you get a
Yeah,
bonus on some feedback from internally on the team.
absolutely. Yep. And
Wow.
yep. I mean, it also, of course, depends upon like sales units and things like this. But yeah, certainly a portion of that. We do 360 reviews as well, so it doesn't just go to the people I'm supporting. It goes to
Right.
executive managers and all the way up. So
Well, it's
yep.
interesting because if there's anybody here from marketing, you better hope the salespeople don't become part of that review process because the lead stuff. So, just that's how we'll end it, folks. I appreciate it. So this has been super fun and interesting. And please, folks, reach out to Kyle. You cannot pitch him. You cannot say, "Hey, I want to sell Mercedes this." I do think, Kyle, you can tell me if I'm wrong. Yeah, I will gladly answer a procurement process situation or something like that. And I'm going to work with Kyle offline to help him create a side hustle on teaching you people this stuff anyway. So
I
don't be
love it.
surprised.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised if he tries to charge you and then you get to reverse engineer negotiating with him later.
Yeah, there we go. A
Uh,
15% off list price immediately. Here we go.
yeah. All right. Turn it back over to you, Eduardo. Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate it. Thank
Awesome.
you, everybody who gave us your time today. We really appreciate it. We hope this was helpful.
Abs- Absolutely. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that
And
was
if it sucked, let us
fantastic.
know
I
too. We
just
won't ever do it.
yeah, just put in the YouTube comments and I'll let you know, Richard. I just put some links in the chat so you can connect with Richard on LinkedIn. You can connect with Kyle on LinkedIn. You can check out the Harris Consulting Group. Richard has a bunch of fun trainings there for you. And I also put a link where you can get a complimentary sales leader virtual bootcamp with Richard Harris. That would be fantastic. So, Richard, Kyle, thank you so much for your wisdom today. We love having you here. Audience, you are the best part of MSP. I love the questions and all the comments in the chat. You will receive a follow-up email today with the recording so you can have all the procurement tips on the tip of your hand whenever you need it. And thank you so much. We will see you in the next event. Richard and Kyle, we can go hang out backstage while the audience, the MSP team works to get the recording to the audience.
All right.
Sounds
So we will
great.
see you
Thank
next
you.
time.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thanks for being
everybody.
active.
Thank you, everyone.